There's a war going on right now. It's fought every single day. On a scale so massive, it's almost impossible to really wrap your head around. But this isn't a war between countries. It's the war we wage for our food. But before we get into the cold, hard numbers, let's start with a thought experiment. A kind of a dark one. What if, for every single life you took, you were condemned to live that exact same life in your next go-around on Earth? Just picture it for a second. A person going about their day slaughters an animal for a meal. For billions of people, this is just a totally normal, everyday act. But then, the cosmic wheel turns. In the next life, that same human soul is reborn as the very animal it killed. A cow, a pig, a chicken, destined to live that life and to face that same end. And what about the animal from the first life? Well, it's now reborn as a human, and it continues the exact same tradition of slaughter. It's this terrifying, seemingly unbreakable loop of violence, just passed on from one life to the next. Okay, so that story, it's a dark fantasy, right? Of course. But the reality it points to, the sheer staggering scale of the lives involved in our food system, that is anything but fantasy. The real-world data paints a picture that is, in its own way, just as mind-boggling. So let's get into it. Let's look at the daily toll, the unseen, almost unimaginable numbers behind the food that ends up on our plates. Okay, let's start with cattle. Every single day, around 900,000 cows are slaughtered for meat. Now, to help you visualize that, if you lined up 900,000 cows, they would stretch for 1,800 kilometers. That's literally the distance from Madrid all the way to Amsterdam. And that line forms and then vanishes every single day. And it doesn't stop there. For pigs, the number is even higher. We're talking about 3.8 million slaughtered every day. But honestly, neither of those numbers even comes close to the daily count for chickens. Globally, it is an absolutely astonishing 202 million chickens per day. And to really let that scale sink in, let's break it down. 202 million a day means that every single minute that ticks by, over 140,000 chickens are killed. Every minute. But believe it or not, there's a whole other battlefield we haven't even touched on. One where the numbers are so huge, they actually become a mystery. I'm talking about our oceans. So the natural question is, okay, what about fish? How do they factor into all this? And this is where things get truly wild. The numbers are so immense, so far beyond our ability to track, that big global organizations like the UN's FAO, they don't even count individual fish, they just weigh them in tons. The individual life is completely lost in the sheer mass of it all. Now, some researchers have tried to estimate the numbers for just farmed fish, and the estimates are all over the place, from 77 billion up to 124 billion per year. Either way you slice it, we're talking about hundreds of millions of fish killed every single day, and that's not even counting all the ones caught in the wild. Look, this daily slaughter isn't just about the animals. This war has a ton of collateral damage, and the price, well, it's being paid by our entire planet. Just think about the impact on our land. Almost half, nearly 46% of all the habitable land on Earth, so land that isn't desert or covered in ice, is used for agriculture. It is the single biggest cause of biodiversity loss on the planet. And here's the kicker. The vast majority of that farmland isn't for growing the vegetables and grains we eat directly. Nope, it's for livestock, for them to graze on and for growing their feed. We are talking about an area of land as large as North and South America combined. And the impact doesn't stop with land use. This system pumps out emissions that accelerate climate change. It contributes to the terrifying rise of antibiotic resistance, and it even makes global pandemics more likely as new diseases jump from animals to humans. So yeah, the numbers are overwhelming. The consequences are pretty dire. But what if we could break the cycle? What does a different future even look like? The author of the source material we're looking at, Max Roser, puts it in a really interesting way. He says he can imagine a future where our grandkids look back at our time and they're just shocked. They find it hard to believe we lived in a world where killing hundreds of millions of animals every day was just normal. It really gives you some perspective, right? Because when you boil it all down, this isn't just a war on animals. It's a war with friendly fire, hitting our planet, our health, and the very future we're all trying to build. And that brings us right back to that story we started with, that vicious cycle of violence. A cycle like that isn't broken with more violence. It's broken with something else entirely. It's broken with understanding the true cost of it all, with compassion, and with all of us making a choice to try a different path. Which really leave us all with one final big question. It's not just about what the future will look like. The real question is this: can we be the generation that finally decides to end the most deadly war in history?